Okay, so aloha nui kākou, e nā hoa makamaka mai ka piʻina a ke kauana a ka lā, velina mai. That is, greetings, friends, hailing from the rising to the setting of the sun. So across a great distance from where the sun is risen to where the sun is set, we are all here together. My name is Misty Sanico. I am a Kanaka Oiwi writer and the communications manager for Bamboo Ridge Press. Mahalo for joining us today for And Then What? A reading and preview of all the great books that have just been released and are forthcoming from Bamboo Ridge Press. Mahalo to the Asian American Literature Festival for inviting us to be part of these important conversations and events. Before I introduce our fearless leader, Cathy Song, some background info about this festival. The Asian American Literature Festival, which runs through this Sunday, brings together writers and readers through in-person, online, and hybrid events. Curated and produced by a collective of organizations, this is the only festival of its kind. For the first time in its history, the festival is happening across the country and around the world. This year's theme, Cosmic Kinship, uses outer space as a way to explore solidarity across distance and time. The Asian American Literature Festival Collective is a cooperative devoted to stewarding the futures of Asian American Pacific Islander literature as art form and social ecosystem. We'll put in the chat some of the organizing partners and a link to the AALF website with more info, so you should check that out. After the Smithsonian's cancellation of the 2023 festival, the AALFC is now proud to bring you this independently organized and funded event for 2024, and hopefully for years to come. I'm going to also drop more information in the chat on how you can help us keep this going, because I would love to see you guys again for this next year, 2025. Between the events for this festival, we also invite you to join our Discord to participate in daily writing prompts and other fun things. So go ahead and check that out. But it is important to protect our creative spaces and energies. So we ask that you connect with everyone, me kamalama, with care and respect. Feel free to use the chat to share your aloha with these amazing writers as they share their aloha with you through their poetry and stories. Let us know where you're joining us from. And if you hear something you love that they've read out, don't be shy. Just throw a shaka or a heart emoji in the chat too. There will be plenty of time for questions at the end, so drop those in the Q&A box that you can access at the bottom of your screen or in the chat, and we'll get to them when this is POW. As we participate in these digital events, we want to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous lands and recognize the legacy of colonization embedded in the technology that we're now relying on, tools and internet access that many Indigenous communities don't have. These technologies, often key to our own creative work, also contribute to climate change, which disproportionately impacts Indigenous people, especially in the Pacific. We recognize these challenges and our responsibility to address them. We invite you to join us in using this time with purpose to uplift Asian American and Pacific Islander voices and reflect on how we can contribute to reconciliation, decolonization, and solidarity. The event organizers also wish to acknowledge that we are gathering amidst an ongoing conflict in Gaza, which is part of a long history of colonial violence. As we begin our event, we emphasize that none of us are free until all are free, and that all struggles for anti-racism, liberation, and decolonization are interconnected. So now that I'm pleased to hand things over to our awesome editor at the wheel to introduce these amazing authors and tell you a little bit about where Bamboo Ridge is going. Cathy Song is the author of Picture Bride, Frameless Windows, Squares of Light, School Figures, The Land of Bliss, and Cloud Moving Hands. Most recently, Bamboo Ridge Press published her short story collection, All the Love in the World. She divides her time between Honolulu and Volcano on Hawaiʻi Island. So thank you so much for being here, Cathy. Go for it.
Okay, thank you, Misty. Misty's our tech wizard, along with so many things that we're so grateful for. Bamboo Ridge Press recently celebrated our 45th year of continuous publishing. Founded in 1978 by poet Eric Chalk and fiction writer Darrell Lum, Bamboo Ridge has earned the remarkable distinction of being one of the longest-running independent presses in the nation, weathering over the years many challenges, most recently the closure of small press distributors in Oakland, California. Dependent upon grants and subscribers, I believe it is no small feat that Bamboo Ridge is still alive, especially in these times when so much in the ether clamors for our precious attention. Being an old school press, we still believe in publishing excellent literary work in three-dimensional form, beautifully produced real books we can hold and commune with in the one space that still maintains a kind of sacredness, the intimacy of reading poetry and fiction. For today's program, we've gathered 4 authors of new and upcoming books from our press, continuing Bamboo Ridge's legacy to publish literary and visual works by, for, and about Hawaii's people. Our first reader is Tek Lum. Tek Lum is a Honolulu businessman and poet. Bamboo Ridge Press has published 2 earlier collections of his poetry, Expounding the Doubtful Points, winner of the Association of Asian American Studies Book Award, and the Nanjing Massacre Poems, winner of a Hawaiʻi Book Publishers Association Award. He received an Elliott Cades Award for Literature, and as a recipient of the Hawaii Literary Arts Council's Loretta Petrie Award for many years of outstanding service to Hawaii's literary community. Bamboo Ridge is once again pleased to be the publisher of his newest collection, The Old Timers. Tek.
Thank you, Cathy. My book, The Old Timers, has just been released. It imagines the lives of Chinese immigrants in Hawaii circa the year 1900. And I'm going to share 4 poems which describe how they experienced and adapted to their new home in Hawaii. My first piece was inspired by a family memoir of a Chinese couple and their children making poi in the Lahaina area of Maui. Poi is a paste made from the corm or root of the taro plant and is a staple of native Hawaiian diets. Farmers would sell their harvests to producers like this family, who would then convert the taro into poi for retail sale. This poem is called The Poi Factory. Our family worked in shifts and took on different chores. Eldest sister and I woke up before dawn to prepare the day's meals for everyone. I also collected the kiawe from the shed and the water we needed for the steamer. My father and mother knew several languages spoken in our neighborhood and greeted the farmers who arrived throughout the day. They came with their mule carts, loaded with heavy burlap bags full of taro. We scrubbed off the mud and fibers and placed the corms on wooden racks in our oven. Younger brother and younger sister were responsible for tending to the coal fire, making sure the pan of water was kept boiling, but also that it did not evaporate out. They took turns as well, wetting down the canvas draped over the oven. The corms, which had been steamed from the day before, were gathered up by my uncle and elder brothers. They peeled off the poisonous skin and with stone hammers pounded the taro. Some liked to buy just the mash. For others, we needed in water to sell as paste. All of us helped pack the poi into smaller cloth bags weighing 5 pounds each. These were picked up by peddlers who then spread out on chosen routes to call on households across our valley. Sometimes some of us took breaks to eat a midday snack, though not all at the same time. Whenever one task needed more hands, there were enough of us who dropped our own work to help out. Only when the sun was setting did we all sit down together for dinner, and then we went to bed, except for our parents, who stayed up by the kerosene lamp to settle the accounts and plan for the next day, which turned out to be the same as every other day, year in and year out, until I left home to get married. My next poem is about the notorious Chinatown fire of 1900. In December of the previous year, a Chinaman was discovered to have died from the bubonic plague. Since the Black Death had been widespread in China, the authorities in Hawaii decided to quarantine all of Chinatown, A lockdown was imposed, preventing people from going in or out. They also instituted controlled burns of buildings where new victims of the plague were found. Unfortunately, on January 20th, 1900, one burn got out of control, causing a conflagration that consumed all 16 blocks of Chinatown. The fire. The health board condemns the shanties as someone inside has died from the plague. Other inhabitants are summarily evicted, gathering whatever they can, but with nowhere to go. The fire department surrounds the perimeter, poised with their hoses for the start of the burn. A crowd converges, curious, angry, and resigned, and worried that they themselves will be next. The fire is ignited as rehearsed, but unexpected gusts come down from the valley. Firemen vainly try to contain its spread. People are stunned, immobile, uncertain about what to do. Before long, embers billow up, wafted by the wind, and jump from rooftop to rooftop. Residents rush to stamp out spot fires, tearing down even their own houses to form fire breaks. Narrow alleyways turn into gauntlets of flame. A fireball scours the street, combusting all in its path. Faces are blistered, hairs singed, eyes wide from fear. Everyone is shouting, drowning out the chaos. A store selling fireworks for the new year explodes. A lumber yard blazes. A few run home to retrieve gold or papers. Most, though, just flee with clothes on their backs. Inexorably, the inferno marches towards the wars. It melts electric coils and a hasty abandoned fire engine. Volunteers carry on the backs women with bound feet. Opium addicts delirious are rescued from their den. The refugees try to escape the conflagration, wanting to cross the bridge over the stream, but quarantine militia, pick handles ready, block their way, leaving them to huddle in a no man's land to wait. Sparks fly into the steeple of the church. Soon it becomes a furnace, consuming its beams. Unsupported, its bells crash into the sanctuary below. All of Chinatown hears this dirge. My third poem was written in 1991 and imagines a day in the life of a butcher in Chinatown. Half of the top bunk is his. That is, he takes the night shift, sharing it with a late night short order cook who cares for nothing, not even a sweet bed to call his own. The butcher does not have much more, just what he wears or is in his pockets and what he has saved in his small pigskin trunk, sealed and scented with camphor. A second set of clothes and shoes for festival days and funerals, his ID papers, an IOU, and a little cash, a stack of letters, 2 or 3 photographs, and 2 or 3 clippings, a pressed flower, and a gold chain for a watch he once wore. The room is small and spare, littered near the windowsill with cigarette butts, where his cousin, the old-timer, always sits reading the daily papers or a broadside on revolution in the old country. His cousin, who occupies the lower bunk, never likes to go out, and with the bathroom down the hall and the bar and grill on the ground floor, delivering dinner up to him the same time every night, it seems like he never does, but the butcher loves where the streets may take him. He often dines at the family clubhouse, bringing vegetables or small fish from the docks to share with those who have come in from the country or another island and need a place to stay, and fellow members and relatives to chat with. Many remain after dinner to play dominoes or cards, but the butcher just watches, preferring to exchange a bit of lore or gossip with families who drop by to pray to the great aunt in the front hall. Whenever an opera troupe or an orator comes to town, the butcher is sure to attend. Flood or fire relief drives can consume his spare time, and if a Klansman dies, he will join in the collection. When he returns to his room, the butcher sleeps soundly without dreams, in spite of the after-work rehearsals of the music society next door. At dawn, he awakes to the rooster crows that punctuate each back courtyard and alleyway. For breakfast, he lingers over his usual freshly squeezed orange juice and rice with ham at the corner coffee shop, named after an ancient palace. He tells the counterman with a smile that this is as close to one as he will ever choose to get. As he leaves, the cashier often goes over the almanac predictions for the day. The butcher has never believed in destiny, but is too polite to say so. He waits until he is out of sight before he shrugs his shoulders. On his way to work, he passes an old banyan where he recalls on an earlier morning in the slanting sunlight, he saw a woman with a thin nose and hair as pale as lightning who looked like a girl he might have married. The owner opening up his store always nods to him with deference. The first customers arrive as they set out the barbecue loin and roast pork on hangers near the chopping block that the owner will man. The owner also collects the cash, leaving the butcher to work the second block, which is reserved for raw meat. With a fat cleaver, he chops, carves, slices, minces, and trims. Soon he is surrounded by curly intestines and lumps of tongue, the glutinous feet, slabs of spare ribs, pork chop, pork loin, pork butt, pork belly, kidney, and liver. He sells to the big restaurants facing the river, the temple next to the chicken coops, a few wives carrying their children, the grocery store owner, the bald tailor, and the letter writer who never stops talking. Sometimes the kerosene peddler will curse him for leaving too much fat. Sometimes the barber will bring over a can of soybean milk as a gift. He sharpens his knife when business is slow. He remembers the sage's admonition that to preserve a blade, a cook must seek to play between the joints and the bones. My last poem is a pipe dream of what the streets of Chinatown might have been like 125 years ago. This is called At Dusk. The tabby cat has made her usual rounds, but these days are shorter now, and she keens the darkness coming sooner. She hugs the walls and sneaks across the alleyway, one lone meteor rushing headlong home. Behind the restaurant, amid lengthening shadows, the cashier beats an empty can with his spoon, calling her to a dinner of leftover fish heads, their gelatinous eyes a shimmer of pearls, promising a succulent return to the primal sea. The cook inside fires up his wok, deeply patinaed, stir-frying slices of pork belly and vegetables, then adding a dollop of his secret shrimp paste, this tiny seed quickly blossoming into a bouquet, permeating the courtyards as the light recedes. The old-timer hanging his threadbare wash revels in the savory aroma of this serendipity. In the gloaming, he breaks out into song, his taut line of bleach-white clothes pegs paddling in unison to the gathering wind. On the balcony, the prostitute hums along, recalling the folk melodies of her childhood before silvery moons waxed and waned. She sips from the restorative tea of her reverie, reluctant to leave when her shift begins. The baker has spied on her from his window, but breaks away as it is time for his early bed. He sleeps through the violins rehearsing next door, his snores a chorus to their two-stringed melancholies. He will wake up refreshed before the cocks crow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wing. Our next reader is Donald Carreira Ching. Donald was born and raised in Kahaluu, Oahu. His novel, Between Sky and Sea, A Family Struggle, was published by Bamboo Ridge Press in 2015. In 2018, he received an Elliott Cades Award for Literature. Donald has served as guest editor for Bamboo Ridge Press, including Kipuka, Finding Refuge in Times of Change. Next year, Bamboo Ridge will release his collection, Bloodwork and Other Stories. Currently, he is a professor at Leeward Community College. Donald?
Thank you, Cathy, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The collection that I'm working on currently, it deals with a lot of themes that I typically write about. So family struggle, trauma, drug addiction, expanding out to encompass things like gentrification and climate change and violent crime and these kinds of things that are happening currently on Oahu and specifically in Kaneohe. It's got that kind of specific focus on community. I typically read some darker materials. Today I'm going to sort of keep it lighter as far as I can with the things that I do write. I'm not going to give much context to it. I think the context will be clear when I read it. And I chose a piece because I've never read this piece before, and two, I can actually read it in the entire, I think, around 8 to 9 minutes that I have. So I'm going to read it. Okay. And also just shout out to Tek Lum. He's just one of my favorite just readers. Every time I hear him read, it's just chicken skin. Yeah, just an amazing reader. Sorry. I have to say that. It's so tough to follow him. Okay. This is called The Odds. And if I'm speaking too loud and just throw in the chat that I am, or just let me know. It's so weird reading Zoom. It's also why I chose this piece. It has direct address, so it fits a little bit better. Okay, it's called The Odds. On the last night of my brother Maddie's life, I told him that Portuguese don't know how to grieve. They laugh when they're supposed to cry. They tell stories no one wants to hear. They think because they stayed up for the wake, they can fall asleep at the service. 2 weeks prior, we held a living funeral for my brother. Instead of talking about how much I was going to miss him, I repeated the jokes that he used to tell me, like the one about getting lost after you die. Head toward the light, they tell you. But which one? I said the punchline, and he was smiling in the back. We threw the party at our parents' house. Out in the garage, family and friends talking story and piling their plates with ginger chicken and pancetta. Everywhere was green bottles and boxes of tissue, and on a folding table near the screen door that led into the house was a white igloo ice chest, scuffed a rough brown from use, Maddie's name fading on the side. The smell of the last ulua he caught still seeping out of the cover. Beside it, a fat black marker for people to write their last words to him on the chest. Where there was space, I scrawled, I didn't forget about the 20 I owe you. Remind me next week. Wait until your father sees that, Auntie Margaret scolded, wagging her finger at me. In case you don't know, Maddie's father is my father. My mother is his. They met when we moved churches after my father left. I was 8 at the time, and when I asked my mother why he wasn't coming back, instead of telling me about how he had messed around with another woman from the hotel he worked at, she told me Jesus was the only father I needed. Then she met Josiah, Maddie's dad. After they started dating, I asked Maddie if he thought God would be mad that she was cheating on him. We had snuck out of mass to make it to the hall where they served donuts and coffee after. Between bites, glaze cracking with each mouthful, we talked about how it didn't matter because Jesus was never around anyway. Too bad she hurt us. You pray to him now. Mom played softball in college, tried to get us both to play baseball in intermediate school. We were too busy thinking up signature moves for when we made it to the WWE. Try a real sport for once, she told us, not giving us a choice. She dropped us off at practice and watched us walk onto the field before heading to get her hair done, not staying long enough to see us hop the fence. Used the snack money we were supposed to give the coach to buy manapua and rice cakes, Maddie always peeling the brown layer off the top. What are we going to tell her now, he said. What I always tell her, I told him. What Portuguese you know plays baseball? Maddie's mother was Portuguese too, plus Filipino. Had a heart attack when he was young, leaving behind a recipe for beef machado that our father made every Friday and brought to us at work. 4 days a week after school and homework, we spent our night at Ricky's Service and Gas, hanging out in the parking lot after we closed. Us and Chanel, who was 19 but flirted with the grocery store clerk at times like she was 21. We'd have a couple beers and she'd dare us to do something stupid, as if that wasn't what we always did anyway. Streaking through the drive-thru at Mickey D's, throwing old hot dogs at passing cars, huffing gasoline until we swore our eyes glowed green. I think you can die from that, she said. She laughed at us. But when you're that age, you don't think about death until you're at the edge of the roof and looking down at the mattresses you stacked 2 stories below. Even then, you're like, I'll be all right. So you jump anyway. You drive around without your seatbelt on. You get behind the wheel, you get behind the wheel when you know better. You pick fights over dirty looks. You miss all your mother's calls, and you don't even bother to tell her sorry the next day. Her funeral was the worst. At least we were legal then. We got drunk on the curb outside of Borthwick Mortuary. Maddie lost his eulogy, so he went and stole what I had written. I was pissed until he told the story of how Mom caught me and Jenna from down the road, half naked on the couch when we were supposed to be at school. He knew his mistake, but kept going anyway. Typical Portuguese. Your future first, babies later, he said in her mom's voice. I swear, if she hadn't been cremated, she would have risen from the dead and given him lickings right there. I busted out laughing. The cancer took her quicker than it would Maddie. We were out of the house by then, splitting a one-bedroom apartment in Kalihi. He didn't notice the streaks of blood in his urine. I was the one who did. Maddie never remembered to flush. You get your period? I asked him in front of Dad, but Dad wasn't laughing. Spooked him, the news. He made us both get physicals. Only Maddie needed more tests. To ease the anxiety, we planned a party for his birthday, his 25th. Mine was a month later, so we figured we'd just throw them together. We were done with clubs. Vegas was stale. Honestly, let's just have everyone over and cook steaks, I told him. In the front yard, we barbecued trays of bacon-wrapped mushrooms and filet mignon from Costco. We all pretended that we weren't waiting to hear about his results. What are the chances, right? His coworker asked. When we were kids, we used to play poker with all the dads from the neighborhood. Dad taught us the rules and let us take sips of his beer. Talked to us about when to bet and when to fold. We tried to remember what he taught us when we played Texas Hold'em with our friends. It wasn't about the money, really. It was about the conversation and the pissing contests, the moments buzzing off Coors and a couple of good hands that Maddie would talk about going back to school, leaving the fiberglass splinters and back pain of construction behind. What the hell are you going to do? One of our friends would ask. And he'd mumble something about working for the Star Advertiser, maybe teach high school like our mom, or write poems like his. When the time came, the days gone, the pain too much for him. Sorry. I told him I'd leave the eulogy there. Even if people asked, I wouldn't mention the silver chest of poker chips that was still on his bedside table beside the diazepam and morphine that he had asked to take and the letters he had written for Dad and me. He had even written one for his ex who had cheated on him after 2 years together. She felt so guilty when she heard he was sick that she sent me a text that took 3 scrolls to get through. She didn't even have the balls to text him herself. Truth was, he lied to her too. He knew about the blood, had seen it, but figured the odds were with him. Less than 10%, he said. Figured it was something he ate. Figured he wasn't that lucky. I always beat him at cards. Of course, I knew his tell. Dad told me when he stops looking at his hand. Yet I missed it. The whole time he knew, but he just let us live like he wasn't losing. Nah, tell him how I played it, he managed to say that day. Tell them I was all in. I passed him the pills and a glass of water. Dad didn't want to be there when he took it, so it was just me and him like it had always been. I looked at the letters again and I thought about the speech I had given earlier, thought about the eulogy I would have to give when the real thing happened. I should have written you something, I told him. Tell me now. I thought about what he had written down in the letters and what he would have said if it were him holding the empty bottle instead of me. He closed his eyes and he tried to speak. I did it for him, telling him everything he taught me to say, starting with a joke. You know, Portuguese, they don't know how to grieve. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donald. I've had the pleasure to see some of these stories because I've been the editor for Blood Work. So I'm really thrilled that we're going to be publishing Donald's stories. Our next reader is Scott Kikkawa. Scott is the author of Kona Winds, Red Dirt, Char Siu, and the upcoming Sporting Girl, all from Bamboo Ridge Press, noir detective novel set in post-war Honolulu. He contributed to Akashic's books, Honolulu Noir, and his stories have appeared in crime fiction and anthologies. He received an Elliott Cades Award for Literature and a selection as one of the other distinguished stories of 2021 in the 2022 Best American Mysteries and Suspense. He is a columnist and associate editor for the Hawaiʻi Review of Books And I love this part. He is a federal law enforcement officer. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Kikkawa.
Well, thanks, Cathy. I'm here by the grace of the federal government because they saw fit to give me the day off today. And I'd much rather be doing this than anything in my office. I'm going to be reading you the first few paragraphs of Sporting Girl, which is the fourth novel in what is now a series. This story is set primarily in 1954, but there are sections that jump back to 1942. So here it is, about a little under 10 minutes of Sporting Girl. And sorry, I'm going to read this in what I call detective monotone, which is the only voice I know. Happy Tokuda had vanished into thin air, again, on an island. Who the hell does that? Maybe it shouldn't surprise me. Happy had 100 friends and just as many people who weren't friends but who owed him favors. Then there were those he could dupe. There were lots of those, more than I could count. Happy was Chaucer's miller, the perpetual vagabond who dared to match his betters and somehow managed to upstage them. It's true that many found Happy and his ways offensive, but they had to look his way with rapt attention despite their disgust and contempt, and that is where he managed to fleece them. Not me. I never fell for it. I first met Harry Happy Tokuda when I was in my junior year at McKinley High School. McKinley was a big block just diamond head of downtown Honolulu. Its location made it convenient to both Kaka'ako and Sheridan Tract, neighborhoods crammed with Japanese families and businesses, which earned it the moniker of Tokyo High. My 4 older sisters preceded me in attendance there. I had earned a starting spot on the varsity baseball team as a first baseman, probably owing to my size. At just a fraction of an inch shy of 6 feet, I was big for a Japanese boy. Even the Hawaiian kids from Kamehameha's team who played outfield backed up when I approached the plate. I always got a kick out of that. Happy Tokuda was in his late 20s at the time, a man with enough time on his hands to drop in on a high school baseball practice when most grown men had things in their lives that robbed them of time, like jobs. Happy wasn't burdened that way. He was a comical-looking guy with a large, round face and prematurely thinning hair, which he covered with a silly little black wool beret, the kind that I had seen painters and schoolgirls wear when I was in France during the war. He had a short, stocky frame he dressed up with a checkered sports coat and a bright shirt with no tie, baggy trousers, and saddle shoes. And Happy smiled, a lot. I think it was probably because it was his normal expression. The idiotic grin was a natural feature. Almost anyone who met Happy thought his smile was what gave him his name, but it was really his poor penmanship that was responsible. When he signed his name Harry, his R's looked like P's thanks to the fact that he mixed upper and lowercase letters in his print signature like a slow child. Happy dropped by our practice to sell bubblegum and chewing tobacco and occasionally much more wicked contraband like cigarettes and girly magazines, all at dirt cheap prices. He carried his wares in a worn leather briefcase like he was some kind of businessman headed to the boardroom. We all gave Happy many of our nickels for something to stick in our mouths during batting practice. Guys without fathers who kept liquor in the house or without the guts to pilfer it often put clandestine orders for hoochin' with Happy, who would obtain a pint of bourbon or bottles of beer and deliver the goods at the gate behind center field on Kapiolani after practice. I went on patronizing Happy's portable store for a couple of weeks until I learned that his goods were shoplifted from a few nearby mom-and-pop stores. Wally Yoshida and Sam Nomura were talking about it during batting practice. When I found out that my hard-earned nickels were being spent on stolen goods, it really made me angry, and I told Happy so. "What's eating you?" Happy asked. "No big deal, first base." That's what Happy called me. He called us all by our positions. "No big deal. You sold me something you stole," I said. "That makes me a recipient of stolen goods. I could go to jail just the same as you." "Who's going to call the cops and tell them? You? How about you, shortstop?" He looked at Wally, who shook his head. No way, said Wally. I like my cheap chew. You're no help, I said. I cuffed Wally on the side of the head with my glove. You see first base? No big deal, said Happy. He smiled wide so I could see the gap between his front teeth. It made me think of a rodent. Disgusted, I spit my barely chewed bubblegum into the infield dirt. Don't ever sell me stolen shit again, I said. I'm giving you nickels for something that didn't cost you a goddamn thing. Sure it cost me, said Happy. I take all the risks. You could too and get all this stuff for free, but you don't. I do. What you pay me isn't just for stuff. It's for me sticking my neck out. For you. You know what would happen if that crazy pake or his old lady caught you? They'd beat the shit out of you with that big broom handle they keep by the cash register. That's what they do. And they'd catch you first base. They would. But not me. I'm too fast. Too slick. They wouldn't catch me, I said. Yeah, they would. No, they wouldn't. That's because I wouldn't steal their shit in the first place. Happy smiled at me. He had a goofy, lopsided grin that made me think of the retarded kid on our block who followed the Manapua man around and mimicked his cries. But that stupid smile was admittedly endearing and disarming. I had a point to prove, though, so I stood my ground and didn't smile back. Happy snapped open his briefcase and withdrew a fistful of bubble gum. He thrust the pink pieces of gum twisted in wax paper into my glove. Suit yourself, first base, he said. For free. He nodded at the gum in my glove. We're even now, so no hard feelings, okay? I turned the glove upside down and let the little bits of pink happiness fall into the dirt at my feet. Crook, I said. Happy just smiled and snapped his briefcase shut. So serious, he said. He turned and walked away to the fence at the back of center field. Wally dropped to his knees to scoop up my discarded bribe. You don't want it? He asked. Be my guest, I said. I watched Happy strut confidently across center field to the fence in Kapiolani where he let himself out through the gate. He turned and waved. My shameless teammates, his satisfied customers, waved back and cheered him on his way. Smile, first base, he shouted. It won't break your face. Go to hell, criminal, I said. Happy waved one more time, then he disappeared behind the fence, leaving the gate swinging. When he was gone, I allowed myself a smile. That was in the spring of 1941. A few months after that, the world would change. It was a long time ago. It's 1954, and I'm knocking on doors in a Wailua plantation village, where a tip had come in that Happy Tokuda had been sighted there the day before. I'd been showing all the Obasans and young mothers his photograph and asking if they had seen him. No, they said, all of them. It was going to be a long day. A lot had happened since I first met Happy Tokuda, our bubblegum and tobacco fence. In the intervening years, I had grown up, if you want to call it that. I had graduated from McKinley and gone overseas to fight in the big war for a country that treated me and mine like traitors and spies. I had gone to a big deal college with the government's thank you money and obtained a degree in an obscure subject. I came home and had become a cop. I got married, got a house with a mortgage, and even got a kid. Grown up, a man, a citizen and a taxpayer like all the rest of the folks who, somewhere along the way, quit being children and sold their souls for a paycheck. The name on the pebble glass window on the door to my office read, Francis H. Yoshikawa, Detective Lieutenant, Homicide Detail. My mother called me Hide-kun. My sisters, my wife, and my friends called me Frankie. To other cops, I was the Sheik. The last time anyone called me Francis was when I was still at McKinley on detention, and nobody called me first base except for Happy Tokuda. That day back in 1941, when I confronted Happy about the stolen shit he sold me, was my first encounter with that lovable grifter. It wouldn't be my last. When I was first promoted to detective and assigned to the Central Detective Bureau, I was detailed for a time to the Bunko Squad to work some of their overflow cases. About half of them involved Happy Tokuda as a primary suspect. I arrested Happy in every single one of those cases, and in every single one of those cases he walked. Tough luck, first base, he'd say, with that ever-present stupid grin gracing his wide face. He'd do his best Gene Kelly shuffle down the Spanish-tiled stairs of the station foyer and out the door onto Bethel Street. It irritated me to get beat by Happy, particularly because All my collars of him were clean, and they all took so much work. In the end, I managed to nab him because even creatures as slippery as Happy Tokuda were creatures of habit, and I got to know Happy's habits over the years. Which wasn't to say that catching Happy was easy. It was one thing to be able to anticipate his moves, but quite another to keep up with them. Keep up with them I did, though, and my perseverance was always rewarded by the inevitable arrest. "What can I say? You got me, first base," he'd say, and hold out his wrists for cuffing, all the while smiling and offering me one of his pilfered cigarettes. More often than not, I'd accept the smoke, and we'd talk on the way over to the station about old times. When we got there, I'd get him out of my car, and we'd walk up the stairs together. Then I'd turn him over to the receiving desk for booking. Predictably, before I could finish my paperwork, I'd get word that Happy was being released. Some witness always recanted, saying they were mistaken. Sometimes it was a complainant who recanted. Tough luck, first base. That's the first few paragraphs of Sporting Girl.
Thank you, Scott. I can't wait to read it. I've read all the other three, and I can't wait to read more of The Sheik. Thank you. Our fourth reader is Tamara Wong-Morrison. She grew up in the 1950s and 60s when Hawaiians occupied the last rung on the social ladder. She identified with being part Chinese rather than Hawaiian then because, quote, "I was ashamed I was Hawaiian," she recalls. But with the emerging Hawaiian Renaissance and her family's active involvement in protesting the overdevelopment of tourism on her home island of Kauai, Tamara's often angry and bitter poems emerged and evolved. Aloha is Endangered, her collection of poems and songs from a writing life of over 50 years, will be published by Bamboo Ridge in 2026. She taught for 16 years in the Poets in the Schools program before becoming a full-time teacher at the Volcano School of Arts and Sciences in Volcano, Hawaii Island. Tamara.
Aloha, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge Eric Chalk and Jody Manabe Kobayashi for inviting me to play in the Poets in the Schools program. And mahalo nui, Cathy and Doug, for all of your kokua and friendship all of these years. Thank you. So I'll start with a poem I wrote when I was a cocktail waitress at the Coconut Sheraton Beach Hotel on Kauai. Cocktail Waitress series. Koa canoe, you slant on your side, mounted in the hotel dining room, listening to pre-recorded Polynesian songs playing over and over while I cocktail wait on hungry tourists. Herb Kane oil paintings adorn you, finely done. Strange, Hawaiian in a foreign place. Kaulana na pua, they play you from the taped recorder. They do not know the meaning of eating the stones instead of signing the papers of the enemy. Me, local lady, must wear flour in my hair because the management says so. Right or left side, I don't care. All I want from you, Ha'ole, is your money. In return for some plastic aloha, smiles, I don't mean, warmness, aloha, aloha, that is cold. Drink my chichis and mai tais that I cover with paper umbrellas from Hong Kong. See this paradise through glazed eyes. I know of a better way. I'm selfish though. Your taking has taught me to be shrewd. Here we are, Japanese busboy, haole waiter, separated from Filipino wife, working 2 jobs to pay mortgage or rent with 1 paycheck. Oh, $4 in tips tonight. I actually wrote that on a cocktail napkin, and I did have $4 in tips. So, mahalo Bamboo Ridge for publishing my work. Finally, it's taken 50 years to get here. The working title is called Aloha is Endangered. It's not extinct, it's endangered. They are counting whales and letting loose baby turtles, tracking monk seals, and planting only native plants. But who's counting how many Hawaiians left? How many Hawaiians still living off the land, pulling the ahi from the sea, planting kalo, pounding poi? Hard for a live Hawaiian these days. Cannot hunt pig, cannot eat turtles. The kuahivis, the mountains, are nature conservancies, conspiracies to keep us away. Mo better, brah. You go shop Costco, buy Spam, get food stamps, collect worse fare, give up, kill, fight. Now that term, kill, fight, is a term that we people on Kauai would say in the 1960s about being able to purchase our own home because it was already too expensive back in the 1960s. So, next poem. Shopping for one sovereign nation, as if you can go to Costco and buy a sovereign nation. Here we go. When they say us Hawaiians gotta get together, decide on one nation, I tell them, what for? Like we already one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all? Yeah, sure. Nobody telling you about the Hopi Indians, the Inuits, and the choke other indigenous nations. Did they have to get together from one nation? No way. Then why should we? I don't like join one Akaka nation without gambling casinos. How you think we're gonna make money without one casino? Sell lau and red dirt? No way. Somebody up there doesn't want us Hawaiians sticking our 2 fingers into the poi bowl of profits. And what about a nation that can get one monarch, one princess or queen for subjugate us again? I don't think so. Besides, as one Maui princess, not my Kauai ali'i, forget about it. I don't like joining that nation, but maybe somebody else wants. So why not have more than one Hawaiian nation? If the Honolulu nation no make it, then just join one other one. Me, I like join the nation that can give whatever get to the Hawaiians with the most blood first. Hawaiian blood. They deserve it. Not the 2 cents Hawaiian who already assimilated living in Ainahaina, but the brother who living in his car in the back of Makaha, who went to go Vietnam, who's still waiting for Hawaiian homeless lands. Take care of the ones with the most koko, the most blood, living in the kuahivis, not the ones who can line up in the front and push their way around. Forget about those. I like join one good nation, the real Pono kind. But first, I gotta make sure get one smart pake for handle the money first. I had my first boyfriend was pure Chinese. His family came to Hawaii to not work in the sugarcane fields. They came to Hawaii to run businesses. So he told me in the 1970s, he goes, "You Hawaiians stupid. You guys should go buy the land. Save all your money, buy the land first." Which brings me to this poem. It's taken from a quote by a Hawaiian brother from South Kona here on the Big Island. His name is Willie Kaupiko, comes from a family of 14. And when my husband and I were there in the 1980s doing a documentary about this last fishing Hawaiian village in Miloli'i, Willie Kaupiko said, memorable, this is my title of the part, if you lose the land, you lose the life. For you, Willie, it's back to the garden where we get our hands dirty as we mindfully match pace now with nature's rhythms. We are forced to plant beans and corn, sweet potato, lehua kalo, aina momona, fatten the land. Too much spam from Costco. I like spam, by the way, anyway. That costs more in diabetes and kidney failure. 95% of our food is from elsewhere, on the edge of starvation in 2 weeks, frightening dependence on someone else. 30,000 local people will lose their land. The tech hip Madland folk are buying up whatever they can. Realtors, busy. Sell to the crazy city folks searching for sand, sun, fun, paradise. I was hoping to be less pessimistic as I age, but fuck, I think I'm more angry, more disgusted. Rotten mangoes for you to slide down on, stinky pigeons and hunting dogs left in cages, sleeping in their own shit, pissing in their own beds. How can we aloha when that umbilical cord is cut, the lifeline to our soul severed? If you lose a land, you lose a life, Willie said as he pulled up the 100-pound ahi. His family land stretches from Mauka to Makai, hundreds of acres of lava and forests that no one wanted. Too isolated, no electricity, no water, no wonder South Kona remained undeveloped for years, a sanctuary saved from the money-driven Malihini, who call Waikiki progress, minimum wage jobs for everyone, chambermaids, busboys living in squalor. I was at cocktail waitress at the Sheraton Coconut Beach, Mai Tais, blue Hawaiis for the tourists, too drunk to know what real aloha is. No show them. Tutu, Abby Waiamau, owned that land, knew the real aloha as she welcomed in her ohana to her home after church. They would play music, kaukau, talk story between the tallest coconut trees in Waipoli. My sisters, Mokihana and Napua, run up and down the beach in the mornings to wake up all the ohana sleeping in the sand. Breakfast on the porch facing the ocean, where 4 pianos, count them 4, in various stages of saltification waited. They lost their land, quiet title, stolen. Only the coconut trees stand, holding on to the bones buried beneath. They're gonna buy up all the land that we cannot afford anymore. So kill, fight. Why try? Collect food stamps, smoke ice. You lose the land, you lose the life. Back to the garden. And do you have time?
Yes.
I'm trying not to be so bitter. So now I'm playing Hawaiian music, and I'm playing because the music is poetry and the music is healing. So pardon my voice. This is for those places in Hawaii where you can still relax, where it still is paradise. This song is Holo Holo Hono Malino. Holo akui kai, o ke kai, uli, 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 o mai, ma, mai na mi a no, Aku punaya ahemai ko naku hoilina Aku be great. The last verse is E Pa'apona, which is taken from Miloli'i, and it says, hold fast, be pa'a to what is right. And for all of us that choose to still live in Hawaii, oh, and I'm so sad for those who have to move away. Come back home. This is home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was such a treat. Oh, boy. Oh, okay. Can't wait for Aloha Isn't Danger. Can't wait for this beautiful collection that we've been waiting for years and years and years. And we're so looking forward to it. And thank you to all of you today who joined us. And, you know, this is basically the legacy of Bamboo Ridge, really is showcasing, highlighting, gathering, and bringing forth the variety and just the richness of all the writers that we have living here. And it's been a remarkable journey. It's still going strong, you know, we're still going strong. And just thank you very much for this. This is just a sampling of what we do best.
Thank you all so much. What a treat to hear stories and poems and Tamara's singing that just, I got chicken skin and I'm going to go through the rest of my day pa'a and strong. And yeah, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and take some questions. If you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. But you know what? We had a lot of people register for this event, so I set it up as a webinar. But there isn't enough people on here that we can if you want to jump on, I'll make you a panelist and you can come and talk story with us if you want to make a comment or, you know, in person and participate that way. So let me know in the chat if you want me to make you a panelist and you can come up here and join us. Apologies that I didn't set the chat very well and that this is a webinar, not a meeting. It would have been so much more intimate, and then, you know, we could have shared more, but next time. Anybody? Questions? I have a question for the writers, if I can. Okay, so Wing Tek's new book, he has poetry and short story or prose pieces. Donald has also been writing he's written short stories, poetry, and novels. Scott Kikkawa has written short stories and novels, and Tamara is poetry and prose as well. So talk a little bit about the difference between those writing and why your next projects are going to be specific things. Like, does that make sense? Yeah.
Tamara also writes plays, right, Tamara? Oh, can't hear.
Hello? Oh, Dawn in the chat says, aren't we going to hear any of Cathy Song's poems?
Thank you. My role here is I'm editor, and I've got to read. I've been so lucky. I've been able to read all these manuscripts before they've been published.
Okay. Nancy has her hand up. Nancy, did you want to come on? I can unmute you and you can talk, or I can make you a panelist and you can hop on with us if you want. Dawn says that's not a reason, Cathy, that you're just editing.
Hey, Misty, I just hit the wrong button. I'm not raising.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Does anyone want to answer the question that
Yeah, the question I asked
put forth about being able to write on the different, genres?
You know what? I only write novels. Short stories are kind of painful for me because it's a harder form to master, I think. And I don't do poetry at all because I'm not talented that way. I think I lack the imagination, and detective stories is that's all I know. So you can only expect those two forms from me, unfortunately. I know better than to experiment and to stick my feet into things that I don't do well.
I concentrate on moments in time, single moments in time. That's really how my mind works. It's very difficult to think about things that go over many moments in time to get to a plot. That's very hard for me to do. So I think I tried a few prose pieces in my book, but I think I better stick to poems. They're easier.
Yeah, poems are harder. Yeah, I mean, I prefer short story because of its precision. So I probably also like poetry, but I think back when I was learning poetry, it didn't make much sense to me. Now that I sort of have a clear understanding of things like sestinas and villanelles, like I do gravitate toward that because I feel like I can tell stories within those spaces. I hate novel writing because of I like feel like, why am I reading this 300-page novel that could just be 20 pages long? It's the same story and it's better, and I'm skipping half of this stuff I don't need. But I just finished a second novel, a climate fiction novel, that I'm hoping to start sending out. But that started as a short story. So it started as a short story that is actually the first story in this project. So yeah.
I like how Donald says, I don't really like writing novels, and then he just bangs out a novel. Or he's like, I'm not really familiar with poetry, and then he writes all this poetry that gets published. So, oh man, Donald. I just wanted to read this to you guys here in the chat. Lauren says, thank you to you all. I live in Ohio. I'd never be able to attend author readings like this normally. So thank you for doing it online. Mahalo for joining us, Lauren. We're so glad that you could be here. This is why we like to do these kinds of readings. Also, a lot of Hawaii people are in the diaspora. So I think we have a lot more people who are from Hawaii but living away from Hawaii that are submitting to Bamboo Ridge now. So quite a lot of our writers, we try to do these kinds of events so that they can be connected to us and share their work as well. So I'm so glad you could be here. It's okay. So Dawn says she still says she wants to hear one of Cathy's poems, but she also really loves Wing Tek's book, The Nanjing Massacre. And she asked for Wing Tek if you write sonnets or villanelles or any other forms, Wing Tek.
No, they're too hard. I keep things simple. Poems in free verse that are short is really simple. That's my forte.
I'd like to add in, can you hear me?
Yes.
My students, my middle school students, they've practically, a lot of them have given up on reading novels. They're into graphic novels, into texting. And my fear is that the younger generation reading is like beginning to become a lost art. I think that's sad, which is great why we're doing this. You know, they're more into online and tech and the social media, and maybe there's a new writing form that will emerge from it. I'm not sure. But for myself, I find I'm being gravitated into the melody and the music. So far it's been easy. I've written 3.5 songs.
And some of those songs you're going to put in your book, right? Okay, yeah, that's going to be great. Okay, and if you guys have any other last comments or questions that you'd like to make or share with each other. Okay, let me get my little thing out here. Okay, so just to share with everyone, if you're interested in these books, you should consider getting a Bamboo Ridge subscription. The books come right to you and you even save on shipping. I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you're also interested, oh, sorry, don't forget, there's a couple more AALF events coming up, and some of them are virtual or hybrid. So you should sign up for those or check those out on the website. If you're interested in keeping up with all the scoops at Bamboo Ridge, consider signing up for our monthly e-newsletter. It's free and no spam, I promise. But if we do spam you, it's low sodium and it's not going to be that bad. So if you're on Oahu, poet Wing Tek Lum, who you just heard read today, has a lot of events coming up, including one in historic Chinatown, Honolulu, and another at the Hawaii Plantation Village. So visit our event page for all the latest info on those. I'm going to drop that in the chat too. But I think that's it. Thank you, Cathy and Scott and Donald and Tamara and Wing Tek. Always thank you, Wing Tek, for being here, and all of you audience for your support and your chatting.